What is up, everybody? My name is Gracey. Welcome into another round of I Tell You What Happens in the Kansas City Chiefs game coming up this afternoon. Welcome in if you are joining via YouTube or if you're joining via Twitter. Those are the two places I am streaming on. YouTube is a little bit more interactive, so if you have any thoughts, feelings, anything chiming in about this game today, feel free to share them in the YouTube comments. We are going to have a jam-packed one because not only do I have the game chart to cover today, we have the Chiefs and Raiders rivalry. At some point, I'm just going to give you a heads up. I am going to call them Oakland. It's not my fault. I would like to claim my Kansas City born and raised status here because I think that maybe in 10 to 20 years from now, I might start calling the Raiders the Las Vegas Raiders. For now, if I just bring up the fact that Oakland is on my mind, it's only because it's habit. It's not because I am confused with where the Raiders actually are located. In fact, if we want to jump right into the game chart today, we are looking at the Kansas City Chiefs at the Las Vegas Raiders. See, I knew what place to put the location for the chart. I'm clearly an expert in this field. But one of the cool things about working with astrology and especially sports astrology is that we get to learn and grow and kind of move through this space together. While there have been plenty of people ahead of me in the sports astrology space, there are a lot of books and a lot of things that are out there. I do want to remind you that I have completely and totally taught myself everything I know. And it's not because I don't absorb things from books. It's because the methods that they use just don't really fit what I do. So if you're just joining and you're just tuning in, my name is Gracey with Northern Astrology. And we are talking about the Kansas City Chiefs at the Las Vegas, not Oakland, Las Vegas Raiders today. And as always, it's going to be a little bit of a fun shootout to say the least, excuse me. If you are in the Midwest and are experiencing the 40 to 50 degree temperature changes on a daily basis, you understand why I have the sniffles and you don't need to listen to it. So I'm going to mute myself occasionally so you don't hear me drinking or sniffing or any sort of coughing or clearing my throat, but I will make sure that I continue and finish my sentences. It's been a little bit of a habit to run on and on. So I wanted to start off the game chart with where we are actually basing this energy for today's game and not just talking about all the different things I have going on in my life because I could keep you guys occupied with that for hours, honestly. But if we're going to be looking at the game, we're going to start with the ascendant. I kind of want to get a little arrow pointer so you guys can see what I'm talking about here, just because I feel like if I am circling something on the screen, you can't exactly see it. But if you were to look at this circular chart that you're seeing in front of you that says the Kansas City at Raiders at the very top left, you are seeing the name, the subcategory of what this chart is. Since it is a football game, it is an event. If it's a person, you'll see male, female, or unknown. And then there are some options that you can play with as far as making sure that you file these all. So you don't get to see my filing system names, which would be a little bit invasive. But you do get to see that I am using this is the game chart, but for the other teams, you can see we're switching over to the Raiders. You can see on the opposite side of the title, we're going to have the team information, the day that they were founded. For the Raiders, that would be January 30th, 1960. We are doing the teams from the day that they were announced to the public. So for the Chiefs, that would be May 22nd, 1963. And that would be where we're going to be getting the two teams' energy from. I have been experimenting over the last few months with different variations of each kind of birth chart for the teams. I know that there's a huge almanac of all the teams and all their charts, but I'm still trying to figure out if I want to use the day that the team was announced to the public or the very first game played in the current stadium of each team. I think it's important because the location and the energy, excuse me, of, I told you I was going to mute my sniffing and then I didn't, so my apologies. But the very first game played in said stadium for that team. So for the Chiefs, it would be technically September 17th, 1972, and that was a home game against the Dolphins. If you know anything about football history, you know that the Dolphins won because in 1972, the Dolphins had the only undefeated season so far. Yes, the Kansas City Chiefs are undefeated at the moment. However, it's really interesting to see how much of the first half of the season the schedule was just insane, right? So we've been really the Kansas City Chiefs have been absolutely destroying the naysayers and the haters, of which there are many, that have been tearing down the Chiefs' efficiency, their game plans, their gameplay, their execution of everything. You know, the haters have been loud, which is something that I'm like not really that surprised about. You know, when we're looking at the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Raiders for the Chiefs and Raiders rivalry, it's one that goes back to the 60s. It's something that goes back so far that these two teams hate each other within every fiber of their being, which is funny because when you're looking at this chart today with the 0-degree Aquarius rising, so we're going to be going to our handy dandy Sabian symbols book, because what would one of my streams be if I'm not looking up obscure symbols that you've never heard of before? But if you have heard about the Sabian symbols, they are an ancient channeled symbols for each degree of the zodiac. And with 360 degrees of the zodiac, we get 12 30-degree sections. So when we're looking at a 0-degree for Sabian symbols, most people would look to the rounded up degree, which is exactly what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to look at the degree next because everything is rounded up from there. But if you're looking at 0 degrees of any sign, you're going to be looking to the 30 and then also to the 1. Oh, good. That's conveniently not backwards. So if you're looking at this, we're seeing on this side, the left side for me, Capricorn 30 degrees is the directors of a large firm meet in secret conference. And then Aquarius 1 degree on this side is an old Adobe mission in California. So seeing how the Raiders are from California, and they have roots in California, that's interesting enough just because, you know, coincidence. But with today's rising degree, that really kicks off the whole chart. So in a roundabout fashion, I finally completed my first and original thought that I had with this entire breakdown of the chart, which was looking at that 0-degree Aquarius rising, saying I need an arrow to point to this so you guys wouldn't get lost with what I'm talking about. But then I'd actually have to stay on topic, and that's difficult. So looking at the 0 degree of any sign, you're going to look at the 30 and the 1, mostly because the 30 is going to be giving you that rounded out summary of the sign that we just kind of dealt with before, which would be Capricorn. And a summary of Capricorn that's really great is a directors of a large firm meet in secret conference. Just for reference, let's do like Aquarius 30 and show you how that kind of like ties into Aquarius's energy and how it kind of like ties it all together. Aquarius 30 is moonlit fields once Babylon are blooming white. Okay, so let's see if that goes into focus. I don't know if it will, but moonlit fields once Babylon are blooming white. So Aquarius is known as the water bearer. It's also one of the only human represented signs in the zodiac. So I feel like as though the innocence and the purity and the fruits of the past are all described in the keywords and the commentary of the Sabian symbols with Linda Hill here. In case you missed it, my really, really old book that is held together, yes, with painter's tape. One thing we do not have a shortage of. And then the Pisces 1 degree is a crowded public marketplace. So the reason I bring up that 30 degree is because 0 is going to encapsulate kind of like the energy from the sign before, as well as be the starting point for the new one. So the new sign that we're talking about here with the 0-degree Aquarius is going to be the 1-degree Aquarius and Aquarius in general. And that's represented by an old Adobe mission in California. So we see here straight away that Aquarius, we're going to go with Saturn and look and see the chart ruler Saturn, because Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. And with that Saturn at 12 degrees, that is also a Pisces degree. And so in degree theory, it's like, okay, this is a very Pisces feeling, Pisces Saturn. And it's retrograde. And at the moment, I feel like Saturn retrograde is forcing us to deal with issues from the past. And that is no understatement with the Raiders and Chiefs rivalry over the years. It has been just a completely storied and really intense rivalry that, I mean, like, let's be real. The Raiders absolutely destroyed the Chiefs as far as productivity in the 80s and 90s. The Chiefs were struggling while the Raiders were thriving. And, you know, that could kind of be said with the Royals, too. So Kansas City versus Oakland, Kansas City was down quite a bit. But now with the last 7 years, I'd say, since Patrick Mahomes has joined the Kansas City Chiefs, things have been looking up. So definitely wanted to pay homage to the background and the history of these two teams, just because it's important that, you know, when we're looking at this chart, we see Mars right on the descendant across from the ascendant, right? So if you're looking at the chart, I mentioned this briefly before, but it's like a clock. So at 9 o'clock, you would see the ascendant, and directly opposite from that 9 o'clock, at 3 o'clock, you will see the descendant. And right on the descendant, you see Mars at 27 degrees Cancer, which, you know, if we're looking overall at a chart, you see Mars on the descendant, and this game is going to feel a certain type of way to a lot of people. Maybe people that are new fans to the Chiefs for certain reasons. Maybe if you're like brand new to all this and it's because you love a certain pop icon that happens to be dating one of our best tight ends, one of the greatest tight ends in all of football. If you're just tuning in and you're like, hey, I'm new to this, I'm just trying to learn some things, the Chiefs and the Raiders is a great game to watch because you get to see the true spirit of football fans. And Mars at 27 degrees Cancer is represented in the Sabian symbols by a violent storm in a residential canyon filled with valuable homes. I don't want to say that Vegas is a canyon by any means, but it's definitely a desert, and a violent storm in a residential canyon filled with valuable homes. Um, Very much shows like a storm or like a fury being unleashed. So Mars in general, opposite Pluto, which is a big, big, big thing at the moment that we're all collectively feeling. I have Venus natally opposite Pluto in my own chart. So I'm of the, I would say, intense category of people. I'm definitely an intense human being. And I know that like Mars opposing anything, like my Mars natally is on my descendant. So a lot of the things that I've experienced in just like a workplace setting, friendship setting, relationship settings, especially, is that if you're not fully secure with yourself, or if you're not fully secure with who you are as a person, Mars on the descendant is like meeting somebody that mirrors all the worst things about you back to yourself. And I feel like sometimes with my own energy, I can very much be triggering to people who haven't done their shadow work, who haven't done a lot of the things that require you to face parts of yourself that you might not want to. I'm 36 years old. It's kind of nice having that freedom of being like, yeah, the older you get, the more that you kind of ease into these things, the less cutthroat, the less like a sword in your face that Mars on the Descendant feels. But for this game, in this specific instance, looking at Mars opposite Pluto, especially Mars in Cancer opposite Pluto in Capricorn, we're looking at anaretic Pluto in that 29 degrees. So anytime a planet is at an anaretic degree, it is a critical degree in a degree theory. And really just in general, with that being like the last degree of the zodiac, the last full degree, you know, the 30th degree is looked at as that zero, kind of like that transition degree. So we're looking at the last main, like nobody says my sun is at 30 degrees Aries, like it'll be 29 degrees 59 minutes Aries, which means that you are an incredibly powerful and feisty individual as well if you have a 29 degree 59 minute Aries. But anyways, looking at Mars opposite Pluto in a game chart, this is going to be as heated as it gets. And just because, the Raiders aren't in talks to be in the Super Bowl every single year lately doesn't mean, and that was my really nice way of saying just because the Raiders suck. Um, but just because the Raiders aren't in the running to be in the Super Bowl every year, they don't have America's sweetheart on the sidelines. They don't have the things that the Chiefs have on their like PR side. They're still fighters. They're still people that will give you a run for your money, like the Raiders fans, the Raiders crowd. It's so intense. As someone who's actually been to games in Oakland as a Chiefs fan, I was wearing my red and yellow Zubas in Oakland territory. And that was after we had to walk through like a tunnel of barbed wire. So it was a hell of an experience. We'll put it that way. Um, these crowds are intense, and I think that you can tell that there's going to be a lot of disruption and upheaval simply because with Pluto on the ascendant opposite Mars on the descendant, you're going to see some back and forth tension. You're going to see some hot and cold. It's going to be everyone can catch hands today, is the overall theme of the game. But let's get back to chart ruler and working through the rest of the chart very quickly, just because I'm like, we don't need to spend all day breaking down the energy of a game that we've already known is almost 60 years in the making of this rivalry. I think it's longer, but I'm not good with math, so I'm not going to deal with that. I say I'm not good with math, and then I just stare at charts like this all day and understand geometry for astrology. So, you know. All right. So looking at that, we're going to see Saturn, like I said, 12 degrees at the very end of that first house. Yes, this is very much a personal lessons of sorts type of game. This is Saturn recently have dipping into that Pisces degree. So if you're going to see some victimized behavior, it'll probably be starting with players crying out about not getting flags or not getting calls the way that they think they should. And then like there's going to be some energies of what I would say just personal accountability, with the Chiefs and with the Raiders. We're seeing a lot of people being held accountable this game just because Saturn in the first is just such a responsibility driven placement. Continuing on here, we see Neptune and the North Node and Chiron all in the second house, which um, to me, like the durability, stability, and rigidness of the game is found a lot in the second house, as well as what we're gonna see like boosting certain people and things. Neptune retrograde is not necessarily something that we're gonna say is boosting a Mars-driven competition quite like a football game, but you do see that North Node there in the second house, and that's very magnetic. That's very much a magnetism, especially with Aries placements being drawn out of their own head, and kind of like Aries teaming up together is only happening with all that like Libra energy. We have Vesta in Libra, Lilith in Libra. We got the South Node in Libra, as well as rounding out that eighth house. I think my mouse actually did the thing I wanted it to do just then. I think we might have a pointer here soon, people. Watch out. Then going into the third house of today's game, which is the mindset, communication style, very much ruled by Mars. So we're still seeing some moodiness, some temperamentalness. The communication could be not an issue today's game. We do have quite an empty third house. But very childlike, very like, I think the Chiefs are going to be having fun as well as the Raiders. Maybe they are going to be angry for a while, but at the end there, if they can like really pull it together as a team and bring out some childlike joy for this game, that would be one way of getting out of their heads. That'll be the getting out of your head, the Aries ruled head part of it. Then we see in the fourth house, which is home team, we have Uranus retrograde at that 26 degrees, which is trine Pluto. So we're going to see some quick bursts. We're going to see some transformation. We're going to see some growth as far as the Raiders go, and that would be the home team. But having the fourth house ruled by Taurus is usually pretty rigid and difficult to be fluctuating with change or have any sort of change So like changes at half may or may not be the best thing happening here, or not even really possible. They might be too stuck in what they're doing or too concerned with a plan, so to speak. Then we get into the fifth house, with the fifth house ruled by Gemini, which also happens to rule the hands. So I've said the last few games, funny enough, like the last couple games we've had Gemini ruling over the fifth house. So creativity is going to be found in the hands 100%. And we're going to see a lot of hand things being centered here. And just real quick, speaking of hands, I am going to have to take a quick technical break. So we're going to be right back. And I'm going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. All right, I just like to, keep some drama, keep some suspense going here. um, no, we were right at the fifth house ruling over the hands, which is where we left off, or being ruled by hands. So creativity with hands and creativity with gameplay, like quick passes, maybe some people throwing the ball to other people that don't normally throw the ball. Who knows? Maybe a backup quarterback situation with it. But yeah, like the more that I look with Jupiter right there, Jupiter is retrograde. So we've got Chiron, Saturn, Neptune, all retrograde in that bottom half of the chart to start. It's like, you see Jupiter retrograde and it's like, what is that even looking like? And lately, it's been looking like a ton of people getting like I guess just like a lot of voices at once. It's very like Tower of Babel. Like when we get to the later degrees of Gemini and it's like this energy of just too many talking heads, the consistency that I like to have when it comes to like media quality is like people who know what they're talking about. And the last Chiefs game that I watched was watching Kevin Burkhardt with Tom Brady. And I said I wouldn't make fun of it, but it's like, it's hard because you're watching like the announcers just kind of like stumble through something that could have been done a lot better by somebody who I don't know has the talent and skills to be a broadcaster. But Tom Brady, you're doing great. I'm just glad that I don't think he's calling this game, so I'm really blessed. But announcers has kind of been bad. Like I know that announcers have been a big theme, no matter any time, like the playoff games of any team, any place, they're gonna have like people that are biased. I can't be a play-by-play announcer or a commentator because I am incredibly biased. Like I'd be sitting there rooting for the Chiefs while trying to like do their play-by-play content, and that's not really how journalism works. I would know. So like with Jupiter retrograde, Gemini, maybe there's some people that deserve to come back to the mic and there we're hearing from them finally. Or there's somebody that we've wanted to hear from that comes back. A player that we've all begged to hear on a microphone. But whoever it is calling the game today, I will be patient. Referees too might be a little flag happy today with in the fifth house with the fifth house ruled by Gemini. You never know. The duality of man is loud here. And then we go into the sixth house. So the sixth house is something that stuck out to me today because the degree that the sixth house is starting at this 1:25 p.m. local time kickoff for the game today. The sixth house being ruled by the train wreck degree that I mentioned last week. If you guys watched the live stream last week, this is a degree of something that I like to say is like, it's very much like a catalyst event or canon event, whatever you want to call them. And it can be just one thing that leads to a huge pileup later on, or one little misstep leads to a huge pileup later on. Luckily, with the moon ruled fifth house, the moon being in Virgo is actually beneficial today because it's really a lot about checking the details, making sure that everything is physically sound within emotionally. The key to winning this game physically is going to come from the gut health and brain connection with whoever wins. It's going to show that one team was physically prepared for this game and the other team was not, especially with that Taurus degree of the Virgo moon. I feel like that's like, did everyone eat today? Did everyone eat their Wheaties kind of energy? Hopefully they had some good pregame food. That's kind of like the vibe for today. The winning team is going to have that balance within having that sixth house ruled by that train wreck degree and having that be like kind of like a big catalyst event. It could be like one injury, or somebody goes down with the injury and then it like leads to 3 other people getting injured because they weren't paying attention to that person being down. Something like that. But like I said, not necessarily that. It could be another show of just complete and total domination of one team versus the next. That 5 degree of Cancer being the Leo ruled degree, so it's very much loud. And with the sun being in Scorpio today, we are seeing the sun trining that very beginning of the sixth house. So it might be a physical ego battle at first. We're going to be seeing a lot of people having what I'd say physical matchups, very much emotional physical matchups. There's going to be a lot of shit talking for sure. I know we haven't even talked about Mercury really, but Mercury on the MC for today's game, it's going to be loudly shit talking each other. And a lot of physical aggression. Part of Mars being trine the MC as well as Mercury, as well as Neptune and Saturn. Those are both retrograde though, so it's a little bit more grounding and rooting. Like emotions are very, very easily heated today, right? Like we're looking at a chart that while it is an Aquarius rising and it's very much aloof kind of tendencies, we're looking at a game that has the capacity to be very, very much a heated matchup. And it's not because it's going to be like back and forth, a close game. It's just because the physicality of it all, and as well as the like brutal truths and honesty that Scorpio's really great at giving brutal truth. And sometimes it's a brutal lack of truth. And it's just a brutal lashing, and that can be really difficult with Mercury in Scorpio. But with the lower half of the chart, we're going to the 7th house ruled by the sun in Scorpio in the 9th house, which I feel like is represented by the away team. It's interesting to see because I don't know if this is going to be like this in-depth, poisonous type of matchup. In the beginning degrees of Scorpio in the Sabian symbols, we see a lot of like secrets and spillage of secrets. But 4 degrees Scorpio in the Sabian is represented by a youth holding a lighted candle in a devotional ritual gains a sense of the great other world. This sounds crazy, but like my first reaction, it doesn't sound crazy. I'm just an intuitive, symbolic person. So a youth holding a lighted candle in a devotional ritual gains a sense of the great other world. To me, this is like a young Raiders fan watching their team play and being like, damn, I really wish I was a Chiefs fan. Mostly because it's like, damn, we really have to like play in the AFC West against Patrick Mahomes twice a year, and that's like how we're supposed to have a chance in this league. Like, it's wild. That is the karmic degree of the sun today. The next degree that you look at, which is the rounded up degree, is known as the truth degree. The truth degree to this sun is a massive, unchanging rocky shore resists the pounding of the sea. So it's very much like there's been a lot of storms. They've weathered them. This chart is going to be very interesting to watch with the sun at this degree. And then we have a gold rush tears people away from their native soil. Interesting because this is all on the West Coast. So it's like I love the gold rush thing being where the sun is today, and that is the solution degree. But you know what? Kansas City is like a gold town right now because our gold is found in the people that reside here. Kansas City is known as having an incredibly talented and loyal fan base. We have so many artists, we have so many creatives, we have so many brilliant people that happen to also be Chiefs fans. And we're starting to see them in the droves. Like, thanks to Mahomes, half the world, I feel like, is cheering for us, mostly because we have a very talented football team, as well as their other halves being quite talented as well. So going into that seventh house, like I said, it's solar ruled. The sun being in Scorpio is a little bit feisty. So it's going to be more down to that Mars on the descendant. It's going to be very choppy. Going into the eighth house, we have the moon in the eighth house, which is other people's money. You know, if you're in a good place financially, this would not be the worst game to bet on. There's some prop bets. You can kind of parlay some things. I'm not going to like tell you betting advice, mostly because I don't want to be responsible for that kind of win or loss in your life. But if I were somebody that did take responsibility for sports betting advice, I would say something along the lines of this would be a fun game to kind of play with, like player props. So I don't know, like first touchdown ones could be really interesting. I think the first touchdown, just because the 29 is on the ascendant like that, is going to be Kareem Hunt. I think Kareem Hunt shows out a lot today. We are going to be looking at the chart of Noah Gray as well as the noon chart of DeAndre Hopkins, just because that is a recent person onto the team. But Sun in the ninth house, I really think we're going to be shining with a away team. That's really giving a lot of this game away for me, as well as that Scorpio Mercury on the MC there. It's going to be like, oh man, things from like the rivalry is only going to intensify with this game. We see the part of fortune and Venus and Sagittarius there in the 10th house. Sagittarius are going to have a big game today, as well as with that palace. And then going into the Saturn ruled 12th house, once again, Saturn being retrograde in Pisces in that first house. The subconscious, it's only going to be as personal as you let it. You know, the subconscious of today's game is very much a choose your own adventure. Like, do you want to beat these guys up who are already having a terrible season, Chiefs? Or are you going to let the Raiders just kind of like exist? We put in some backup players, and once we take a formidable lead, of course, that could be the energy. I say we once again because I cannot break from being a Chiefs fan. It's just not possible. That's why I do nothing but the Chiefs. But going into the Raiders, I do want to talk about the Raiders in the fact that they do have some promising things happening. Saturn is sextile currently their Capricorn stellium, and with the Raiders having so much 12th house energy, you know, Venus isn't in the 12th house, but Mars, Saturn, and Ceres is, and that's a lot. That's a lot. So if I'm looking at the 12th house to find the person that's going to struggle the most, excuse me, I would mostly look to aspects to Saturn here, just because, you know, Saturn being retrograde in the first house and sextile those placements, we're looking at building energy, but it's not the type of building that I think the Raiders are going to be looking for. This could just be building on their debt, building on the restructuring that needs to happen. But the good news for the Raiders is that they're going to look good at the beginning. I do want to throw that out there because they have their sun in Aquarius actually kind of squaring the sun today. So that'll be fun. But sun square sun energy is usually like something that arises from an ego death, and then you like rebuild yourself to the person that you actually want to be. And sun square Mercury, and Mercury kind of loosely squaring Mercury, as well as Chiron for the Raiders. It'll be a lot of personal lessons today, and it'll be a lot of things that they've needed to feel in their body, or this is a loss or a feeling of what it's like to truly play against the level of talent they want to build to. With the Raiders also acquiring Tom Brady in their ownership, I guess that's why I felt so comfortable just immediately talking shit on him straight out of the gate with him being a terrible announcer. I'm like, oh yeah, he's part of the Raiders now. No wonder I can like just openly hate him and feel okay about it. Because you never want to hate on somebody that's great while you have the next great thing, because it looks like you're just hating on the person that was great for a long time, in my opinion. Like, I never wanted to be like mad at Tom Brady or Patriots fans when we were kind of turning into the Patriots, just because I'm like, do I want to be known for being that person that was just insufferable once we started getting good? No, I don't. So it's a lot easier this way to, you know, have hatred for Tom Brady way after the fact that he tormented and taunted so many people in the Chiefs kingdom. Like, so many. Anyways, I could go on and on for times that Tom Brady made me sad as a Chiefs fan, but I'm not going to, because we are moving forward. And I still remember the like changing point when the Patriots were no longer scary to me. And that was just like, wow, the things that have been undone, Patriots magic, you are now, the spell has been broken. But going into the second house here, we do have the Raiders moon, which is once again based on noon chart, so it's not going to be exact, but having a Pisces moon is kind of inevitable with that 13 degrees, because 6 degrees past and 6 degrees forward, they still in Pisces. With the Pisces South node, that's very interesting, just because the fact that they're going to be experiencing their nodal reversal coming up, that'll be interesting to see if they maybe like kick it into gear again, the Raiders, that is. And that could be very interesting. Today, I feel like this is only going to expose their weaknesses a little bit more. And that pace of the game is going to feel, Jupiter ruled, of course, but Jupiter being retrograde in Gemini in that fifth house of the game. It'll be interesting to see how they hold it together emotionally, and if they're able to take the high road here. That's the only way to put it. And then we go into the third house, which is empty for the game and the Raiders, as well as the fourth house being empty for the Raiders, but having Uranus there in the fourth house, station retrograde. That's what the red means. I keep like circling my mouse around this area, so I know I need to get a pointer, and I will. But as we're going into the fourth house, which is ruled by Taurus, aka ruled by Venus, then we look over to Venus and Sagittarius, which is squaring Saturn today. So that should be an interesting kind of vibe. I feel like they do have a chance to build their legacy and kind of like build up their reputation here with the way that they play today at home, but it's not going to be like an overwhelming like physical, I guess, domination of the Chiefs. So it's still not going to be what they want, which is an upset at home, but it is possible just because of that Uranus in the fourth house. But like I said, Uranus station retrograde is kind of the main thing here. That's not telling me that's going to be a random surprise victory for the Raiders. Going into the fifth house, they do have Lilith at the Anarate degree of 29 degrees Gemini. So that is at the end of the fifth house. And then we're going into the moon ruled sixth house, and Raiders have pretty empty sixth house for today's game. And then seventh house is where their Uranus in Leo and then Pluto in Virgo is. So that is going to be a fun one, just because I feel as though that's kind of like where the energy starts kind of short circuiting. It's like the second half of the game is where the Raiders are going to be short circuiting as far as their emotional discipline, and it's like their mental discipline as well. Going into the eighth house is where we see the North Node in Virgo, and that'll be highlighted just because the moon's going to be in Virgo there, starting at that eighth house, and then the nodes being, very much alike and adjacent to the moon. Then we have Vesta and Lilith and the South Node and Libra as well. That's kind of like sandwiching in that North Node. I feel like it'll be fun to bet on the Raiders, only because like the eighth house to me is Vegas, and that's like the odds of things. It's like, yeah, it's going to be obviously emotionally who's going to be in the higher up. I think this is a test game for the Chiefs to be like, okay, let's get some shit together and let's kind of iron things out a little bit. But for the Raiders, this is like a chance to be like, hey, we have some good parts. There are some good parts here. Please don't dismantle everything in this next stage, but we have some solid parts. Then we go into the ninth house, which is where Neptune is for the Raiders, meaning I think that they have rose-colored glasses on when it comes to the Chiefs, and they're honestly probably their own capabilities keeping up with the Chiefs. Um, Neptune and the Sun aspects are interesting because I have Neptune loosely squaring my Sun, and it can be kind of like rose-colored glasses with yourself. But since the Raiders have an Aquarius Sun, and I feel like that is like loosely squaring their or no, it's exactly squaring. Excuse me. It's exactly squaring their Sun. I feel like they kind of like have a delusional kind of approach to themselves, which I don't think is too far off. Like the Raiders, no matter what, like all the fans act like they just got off the last Super Bowl run. So it's kind of funny, in my opinion, to see some of these aspects, because I don't really look at many other teams' charts unless the Chiefs are playing them. So this is where I get to look at the other teams for once. Going to the 10th house, it's ruled by Mars, and then we have Mercury, the part of fortune, and Venus in there today. Venus and the part of fortune are in Sagittarius. Having a 10th house ruled by Mars is just going to once again activate the fact that I think that it's going to be a very back and forth, very loud, emotional game. And then we're kind of looking into the 11th house where it's where we can like see the team energy. Oakland as a team looks to have like a lot of solid potential as far as, they have the ability to be expansive. They have the ability to tackle everything in foreign lands, and they have the ability to go and travel and be dominant anywhere in the world, right? They also have an exalted Mars. They have Venus and Capricorn, which makes them really picky and choosy. Honestly, the Venus and Mars and Saturn conjunction there really explains to me the silver and black and like the pirate energy. Like, especially with the Jupiter and Sagittarius, like Sagittarius placements always give off like rogue pirate energy to me. So I don't know if it's like just what I'm picking up from their little stellium there with Capricorn, Ceres, Saturn, Mars, and Venus, and then Pallas to start it all off. But like that's such I just love that. I think it's very, very much Raiders. But today that Venus will be in the 11th house with Pallas, which will be something that'll keep them strong. Like they have the credibility, right? Like they have the stadium, they have the brand new stadium. They're in Las Vegas, which is something that I don't think many NFL fans thought that would be a thing, seeing a team in Las Vegas, just because given the fact that NFL teams were like horrified 10 years ago about marijuana, and now it's like, oh, okay, everybody does it. Like we're seeing some growth here. So that'll be interesting. Switching gears, I don't really see much here on the Raiders that like is going to indicate a huge upset. If anything, having an exalted Mars conjunct Saturn, like that shows where they were dominant for so many years. Especially in the late 80s when Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, I think that was the three, were all conjunct in Capricorn for a long time. So like that was late 80s when I was born, because I have that Uranus, Saturn, and Neptune and Mars stellium. It's really fun. And that's like where I feel like they were thriving, like late 80s, early 90s. So I was like, oh, that hits. They're going through their Saturn return now. They're going through a Saturn sextile. It's definitely a different energy, but they have some supporting things. They have some supporting features in their chart that do indicate a strong start, but not so strong of a finish, even though they do have that exalted Mars. I feel like they just rely on their bullying and intimidation tactics, and it doesn't really work. Not in today's game. Looking at the Chiefs chart, just because I talk so much about how I feel like the Chiefs are going to win today, I don't feel like I need to tell you guys like minute by minute breakdown and spend an hour on this, but we are seeing the Chiefs' first house Saturn at 22 degrees in that first house, the kill or be killed degree of Saturn. And that's going to be a really interesting time because this is like a karmic lesson going into Las Vegas. We did recently lose to the Raiders, and that was on Christmas at home, I'm pretty sure. So Chiefs have some bad taste in their mouth from Raiders dynasty, the history, the rivalry from years before as well as recently. So this will be a game of what I feel like is going to be just like solidifying where the Chiefs are. Not saying that the Raiders are ever just like a team that you can skate by with. They are prickly, they are dangerous when they want to be, and they're disruptive when they want to be, especially with having all parts kind of firing back for the Raiders. I think that one guy that's like really disruptive on the Raiders is back from an injury. I think it's Crosby. Don't kill me if I'm wrong. But we're going to see the Chiefs and the Chiefs, Saturn, and Chiron conjunction here happening, loosening up the more that Saturn is stationing retrograde. Doesn't make any sense. But the more that Saturn continues retrograde, then we're going to see when Saturn stations direct that we're going to see that getting closer, and we might have more feet issues then. But for now, I don't think the Chiefs are going to be experiencing the foot issues like they were. Although with Chiron and Pisces, you never know. That also comes through as the people with like addiction and substance abuse, which obviously Kareem Hunt would fall under that category. And, you know, there's a lot of like redemption storylines with Kareem Hunt. I do think he has a big game to get today with that Pluto at 29 degrees Capricorn being right on the ascendant, even though it's in the 12th house. That's also sextile Neptune. So it's like kind of solidifying who he is for today's game. I think that'll be really interesting. I also have, just to let you guys know, if you missed the first part, I also have Noah Gray's exact birth chart that we can compare to today's game because I think he's going to have a big game today. And I have DeAndre Hopkins' noon chart, so stay tuned for that. But I want to get this prediction out there and like off my mind so I can continue going. But that Chiron and Pisces is going to be loosening up. I don't feel like there's going to be as many feet injuries today. Although, you know, with Neptune trine Mars in Cancer, Neptune retrograde trine Mars in Cancer on the descendant, I don't want to say that, you know, it's not possible. Mercury is also on the midheaven, the MC. So we're going to be seeing that grand water trine as well as for, you know, the moon today with Pluto and Uranus retrograde. So we're seeing a lot happening. There's a lot of activations. There's a lot of like holy trinities with the trine, so to speak. There's also a lot of square energy still for the Chiefs that they always have to work through with this chart that we're using. So that Jupiter conjunct the North Node in the second house, I do feel like this is going to help the flow of the game be a little bit more choppy, a little bit more childlike, and a little bit quicker versus I could just, since it's a Jupiter ruled second house, we're not going to see the rigidity of the normal second house with that ruled by Taurus. I think having a Jupiter ruled second house is going to be good for the flow of the game, and that's going to benefit both the Chiefs and the Raiders. Like I said, the Raiders are probably going to come out stronger than the Chiefs in the beginning. The Chiefs do have that Venus in the third house there of communication, short distance travel, siblings, and just kind of like that third house, like wiring energy. If you think of the third house, it's like the wiring, and then like the ninth house is the light fixture itself. So it's very much like not necessarily behind the scenes, but it's like the stuff that below the surface that can make everything work. So I think this Venus here in Taurus is going to be great for the stability, mental stability of the Chiefs for today's game. Going into the fourth house, where I already had mentioned that I'm pretty sure the Raiders are, they have an empty fourth house. Even though the ascendant's in there, it's a noon chart, so the ascendant doesn't really count. Same with the Chiefs MC being in the fourth house here. But the Chiefs do have Mercury, the moon, and the sun in the fourth house there. So I do expect them to shine brightly, brighter than the home team at some point. There's going to be a rhythm change of the game. Like I said, the Raiders could come out and be totally strong today and look great, and the Chiefs could have a hell of a game awaiting them. It's just really how they choose to embody that energy. With the empty-ish fifth house for the Chiefs, just because I don't know what placements could be in there. There's a million things in the sky. There's trillions of things in the sky. I only have a certain number of things highlighted here on this chart. So with the fifth house being empty-ish for the Chiefs, we move on to the sixth house. And as the moon ruled sixth house, like I said, that train wreck degree is ruling the sixth house. So I do feel like there will be some collisions. I do feel like there's going to be some pileups today. But overall, the Chiefs are going to be able to channel that Martian energy there into their north node and really absorb that and let them guide them physically out of that kind of like mashup pileup energy. Going into the seventh house, the Chiefs have Pallas, Mars, Uranus, Ceres, and White Moon, all right there, and Pluto and Juno, all right there at the end of their seventh house or of today's seventh house. So it's going to be very interesting to see the back and forth of today's game. And I feel like the Chiefs are hungrier for this one. They need a win where they're not just like looking like they've fallen apart. They need a win to really show up and solidify their place as in contention for this three-peat that they keep pushing. So it'll be really interesting to see today. And then we have Vesta kicking off the eighth house of Vegas. So I feel like money is there and money is doing just fine for the Chiefs today. If anything, you can have fun with the prop plays, like I said before. Going into the ninth house, which is ruled by Venus, and that Venus being in Sagittarius is fun because it's already like a traveling Venus. So having a Venus ruled ninth house for the away team, which is the Kansas City Chiefs, we are going to be seeing that it's probably going to be highly favored with them today. There's a lot of energy with their Neptune as well as their Lilith up there in Scorpio. It's not necessarily going to be the easiest fought game. Women, I'm not necessarily sure will be a huge feature of today's game. I do know that the woman that everyone wants to know if she's coming to the game or not has been touring, so who knows? But then we're going to see that Mars ruled MC. So it's a Mars ruled public image, reputation, legacy, that kind of energy for today's game. So Mars ruled once again goes back to that Mars in Cancer right on the descendant. It's going to be choppy. It's going to be intense. Today's part of fortune being in Sagittarius conjunct Venus. I do believe Sagittarius placements have a big game today. They'll be running their tushes off for sure. Having Pallas in Sagittarius as well, kicking off that 11th house. The Chiefs don't really have anything in the 10th or 11th house. So we are going to go into the 12th house where they have their south node. So this is going to feel very comfortable to them. Although that south node is between Ceres and Pluto, we're going to be seeing this is like a game that they know better. And they've lost to this team before recently. They don't want to have it happen again, especially with the Raiders, how they've been playing. So let's look at the tri-wheel. And that way I can point out some fun things to just kind of observe about this game. Looking at the direct head-to-head matchups, this is synastry, by the way. If you've ever wondered what like a synastry chart would look like, and you haven't known me for my viral synastry tweets or my breakdowns of the games from other things prior, like some people have been tuning into the show because they've been watching or they've been reading like my old Super Bowl prediction or something like that. There's some weird music happening. Not sure where that happened. Give me 1 second. All right. That was fun. There was some random like Christmas music happening. Don't get a Vizio TV and then let it go onto the home screen because Vizio has this thing that just plays god awful music that's like starting screen music and then they'll randomly have like ads in there. It's not fun. But we can pick up right where we left off, which was who knows what I was saying. But looking at this chart, I do have it pulled back up to the synastry, the tri wheel. That is like kind of my specialty. So, with that being said, welcome back. We are now finally focused and featuring the synastry of today's chart, which is just the tri wheel. On the inside wheel, we're going to see the game like usual. Then on the middle wheel, we do have the Raiders. And then on the outside wheel is the Chiefs. So, once again, if you are just tuning in, welcome. Hi, I'm Gracey, and I now no longer have random music blaring in the background. Um, that was just crazy. I'm like, where is this coming from? Of course, this Vizio Smart TV. It's not so smart after all. The whole, like, I would say the whole axis that we're really, really looking at right now is going to be the first house versus the seventh house. This is where a lot of the today's game, as well as the Raiders and Chiefs energy, is going to be focused around, which means that it's going to be a very deeply personal game. Whenever you have a lot of planets in the first, a lot of planets in the seventh, and it's just a pile up like that is for the Chiefs, this is something that they are looking to just completely and totally like bash the Raiders in from a power perspective, is like having this huge upper hand is what really like yells at me about this chart. With that 22-degree Saturn in the first and Saturn in Aquarius, it's kind of like, all right, so you think you might have it, but that's cute. You don't. So the Raiders are going to come out strong. Chiefs are going to be able to clock them, kind of keep it even, very even keeled. With the Raiders moon conjunct the Chiefs Chiron, we're probably going to see the Raiders a little bit more vocal about getting calls from the refs today. I think that it's just going to be a little bit louder on the Raiders end, making sure that they are seen as the people getting bullied or pushed around versus really doing the bullying themselves. They might be doing the bullying, but they're asking for the other team to get called. Who knows? But it does seem very much like victimization by the Raiders a little bit today, especially with that Neptune and South Node feeling just a little bit much for today's game. Then we're going into the third house, communication and the back and forth. The Chiefs do have their Venus and Taurus there. That's a very vocal placement. The Chiefs are going to be loud. They're going to be heard, and they're going to celebrate. Like, just because they're not at their home team or their home stadium doesn't mean that they're going to turn down the celebrations at all. And then you see the fourth house, which is the home team. It's pretty open for the Raiders, and the Chiefs are kind of jam-packed with that Mercury retrograde, their moon, and their sun on that fourth house. So it's going to be really, they're going to get under the Raiders' skin, absolutely. Going into the fifth house, ruled by Gemini, we don't see anything for the Chiefs, but for the Raiders, we do see that 29-degree Lilith and Gemini retrograde, of course, with the retrograde Jupiter. So maybe some hot-headed creativity from the Raiders, but overall, I think that this is going to be a game that comes down to creative hands of some sort. Like I said, creative passes on the Chiefs' end, or really just on anybody's end. We'll just see how it all plays out. The North Node in the sixth house in Cancer is, I feel like, going to be helping the Chiefs kind of like pull themselves out of the physical, moody, emotional back and forth. They're going to be able to be like, okay, we have a purpose. Let's focus on that a little bit more and use that Mars there in the game seventh house with that's conjunct the Raider. I almost called them Oakland. I caught myself, but it's conjunct the Raiders, Uranus retrograde there as well. So I feel like it's going to be a lot of sudden bursts, a lot of back and forth energy. It's going to be heated, that there's no shortage at all of emotional turmoil here. And we're going to see overall the Chiefs kind of have the upper hand. Like I said, going into the eighth house, that's where today's moon is, which is in Virgo. So please, please, please take care of your gut health today. If you haven't already this weekend, get back on track. Have some bone broth, get some probiotics, have some kombucha, whatever. Really just breathing. Breathing is going to be great. So make sure that everybody is able to breathe this game, catch their breath. It's going to be a big thing. Going into the ninth house ruled by Venus, we see the sun here today, which is what is I think is going to be shining the most, is on the away team. We're going to see a lot of fun back and forth. You know, the Chiefs and the Raiders both have their Neptune in Scorpio, so it's going to just kind of be but the Chiefs do have retrograde Neptune and Scorpio. So it's going to be seeing each other for who they really are. The Chiefs could easily get exposed here today and show that, like, yeah, even against a bad team, they still make these dumb mistakes. Or, they could easily get called out on the road for, like, it shows their weaknesses in a lot of areas, and things that should be easy aren't. With Mercury on the MC for today's game, that's definitely a lot of, like, quick running motion, a lot of, like, lower half activity. So, we're going to be seeing people scrambling a lot more. And it's also a Mars ruled Mercury. So you're going to be going back to that emotional, kind of like, it's just going to be a very highly intense game. Like, you don't even have to pay attention to the stars to know that this is going to be an emotionally charged game. So I do want to show that because of the stars, we know who's going to shine a little bit more under these conditions, which with the part of fortune in the 10th house, Sagittarius, I feel like you're going to have a big game today as well. Sagittarius placements, Aquarius placements, as well as Leo placements and Virgos. I'm going to throw in, let's throw in a Taurus as well, because I do have a Taurus chart to look at. But overall, I think the Chiefs easily win this game. You can kind of see just the imbalance of a lot of the personal areas, the angular areas of the chart, with the Chiefs just dominating that 7th house of today's game. So it'll be interesting to see. Yes, my final prediction is Chiefs win by, I'd say, anywhere between 10 and 27 points. That sounds insane. But yeah, the Chiefs are going to be a lot more elevated this game with numbers wise, and they're going to be wanting to get the ball to as many people as possible, to score as much as possible, to show that, or not to show, but to really just kind of prove to ourselves that we have found a rhythm, that we do have the rhythm back as far as the game control, and like, it's not just always going to be down to the last second and rely on pure magic to win the game. So that's what I think about today's game. The 10-point thing has been sticking out a lot, just because when you see these things that are super close and all this, like, just the condensed chart, the way that it is with that 7th house, and then for the Raider stellium over there in the 11th and 12th house, it's so wild to see. Because it's going to be so much, like, energy that needs to go somewhere. And for the Raiders, it's going to be subconscious. For the Chiefs, it's going to be very much transpersonal. So it's like they're going to be able to express it, where the Raiders are just going to have to stew on this one. So that's my take for the game. The numbers to watch for, I think 0 is going to be huge. Today's game being when the sun is at 4 degrees. I'm not going to say 4 is necessarily a big number, but the 8 probably is. Let's see, with today's vertex being at 1 degree, Virgo, that's where I got the Virgos are going to have a big game. And then the part of fortune being in Sagittarius, that's where I got the Sagittarius being a key feature of today's game. So yeah, I think if we can see some action from Aquarius and Taurus and Virgo and Sagittarius, yeah, I think that'll be really interesting. And then, of course, 29 is going to be a big number to watch, just because of that 29-degree Pluto on the ascendant. And what else could we do? We do like 58. Yeah. Just shout out to the 29 plus 29. This is my math for you guys. Yeah, and I think, like, if we're going to look at any other degrees of today's game, maybe the 27. Yeah, there we go. All right, I can go back and clip that now. I can go back and make sure that that's, like, my prediction. The Chiefs are going to win by 10. We're going to have the signs that I've already mentioned: Aquarius, Taurus, Virgo, and Sagittarius, as well as Cancer, having big games. And then we're going to see 0, 8, and then what else did I say? 29, 58, and 27 having big games. Okay, we got it all. And the Chiefs are going to win by 10. at the minimum, between 10 and 27 points. It's a wide range, people. Okay, we got a lot of numbers up here. I'd like to see you guys pick your numbers too. Feel free to chime in with what you want. But I do want to talk about one person whose chart that I do happen to have, that is somebody that willingly gave me their chart, so I'm super excited about it. And then we'll talk about DeAndre Hopkins' chart fitting into today's game. So somebody that I wanted to share their chart with everybody is Noah Gray, the tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs. About a year ago, I think, is when I got his birth time. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to go back and look. But because it's like a night chart, it's super fun to look at. We're looking at Noah Gray's birth chart compared to today's game. You can see the ascendant and the MC and everything. You guys can figure it out. His birth time and everything is right there if you want to put it into your own calculations. But what I wanted to point out about Noah's chart today is that in the ninth house of today's game, his Mars retrograde and moon are conjunct the MC there. His Mars retrograde is way more conjunct today's sun than it is the MC. But having Mars and your moon in the ninth house and kind of like featuring that, and I feel like his Mars retrograde is getting a big push. Mostly because I feel like until Pluto goes fully back into Aquarius around the end of November, I feel like he's not going to have I think he might have a breakout time in November at some point towards the end of November, just because Pluto will be squaring his Mars a little bit. But I just think that he's going to have more momentum through the end of the season. We're looking at the sun crossing over his Mars already, then it'll be his moon, then his Lilith, and then Chiron, and then we have his Pluto right there too. So the sun being conjunct his Pluto coming up, as well as Pluto going to be transit Pluto, squaring his Mars. It's going to be an interesting end of November for Noah Gray for sure. But for today's game, his Neptune and Uranus and South Node are all in the first house there. So I feel like he's going to feel pretty comfortable. His Mercury in Aries is conjunct his Jupiter in Aries as well, which is really cool. Excuse me. So I really feel like his ability to have those big plays and those big burst of energy. I mean, Mercury conjunct Jupiter in Aries is going to be a huge mental powerhouse. Noah Gray is clearly somebody that can think as quickly as he moves, which is definitely something that you need in a football player. His Saturn conjunct his sun is something that I find really interesting, because with Saturn conjunct the sun, especially with Pallas there in the third house of today's game, with Saturn conjunct the sun, you kind of tend to mature later in life and get better and more physical later in life. So I feel like with this placement, Noah Gray is just going to continue getting better and better, and having the world's greatest tight end as your starter that you get to play alongside. It's kind of cool to be able to be in the same position yet alongside one of the greatest to ever play the game, and kind of take over that workload. And so Noah Gray's Saturn conjunct his sun is really interesting here, mostly because he is also experiencing there's a lot of activation here for him today on the Taurus and Scorpio axis. Regardless, he's born an almost new moon baby. There was clearly a moon happening right there, like a lunation happening when he was born. Anyways, I'm losing track of this. But with his moon on the MC and being opposite his sun, you see a lot of that groundingness of his Taurus sun on the IC, and then his moon being able to take him to those emotional depths in the public eye. Especially when traveling, with that moon falling in the ninth house today. That's going to be really, really important for today's game. So I feel like Noah Gray is going to be quite a conversation starter, or at least a bit of the conversation today at the away game. So that's just part of it. I do love his Vertex conjunct Vesta in Leo. I think that's a really cool placement. I feel like Leos really feel like warm and home for him. So maybe not just because this is falling in the 7th house of today's game, but just in general, I feel like a Leo, like another half being a Leo would be a great relationship aspect for him. So I'm not going to get into that. I have no idea his personal life. I just have his birth chart. That's my story. But because Noah Gray is being singled out for having a pretty great game, or at least a forecast for a great game today, let's look at the newest Chief signing, which would be DeAndre Hopkins, somebody that I thought stopped playing football, but he's only 4 years younger than me. So, who knew? I was like, wait, he's still playing football? That is just me. If I know of somebody from when I was in sports media pretty heavily, like from 2016, 2017, 2018, like if they play during that time, I'm like, oh my God, they're still playing. It's not like I'd say that about Patrick Mahomes. So why I feel the need to say that with wide receivers, I don't know. But here we are. DeAndre Hopkins, everybody. This is his noon chart. So the Vertex, Part of Fortune, Ascendant, MC, all that will not be accurate. But this is his noon chart against today's game chart, which looks like, although people are talking about him having a pretty great start, maybe I can see that. You know, if he's mentally able to connect with today's game, and like if he's nurtured himself and taken care of himself mentally, and he's jumping into this with a pretty solid start and foundation with the team, yes, I feel like that could be the case. However, with Uranus and Neptune retrograde in the 12th house, those are kind of like slow, very slow, not kind of, very slow starting starts to the game. But like I said, with Kareem Hunt being number 29 and seeing that 29-degree Pluto on the ascendant, and that technically is in the 12th house, I can't say much because I know that I've also predicted Kareem Hunt to have a pretty solid game today. So looking at his Saturn in the first house, that's actually close to the Chiefs' Saturn if we're sticking with the 1963 chart for the Chiefs. I feel like this is only going to boost his energy more. He's going to feel a lot of confidence. He's going to feel a lot of structure and like infrastructure from the team that's helping support this whole venture for him. So I really do feel like this will be something that we'll see him active in. Then we go to his Mars, which falls into the 3rd house of today's game. He's going to be actively communicating. He's going to be learning a lot today. With anytime you see Aries placement, especially Mars and Aries, it's like active learning is very much a thing. Aries is the ruler of the head, very much focuses on how they can improve up here as much as they are physically. Then we move on to 4th house, empty. Like I said, the angular placements there based on his birth time are going to be harder to be like, yeah, his MC's in Taurus. I don't know DeAndre Hopkins' birth time. If he would like to hand that over like Noah Gray did, that'd be awesome. I would love to have it. So we're looking at the place where I think he's actually really going to shine. I feel like his Gemini Sun and Gemini Venus, he almost has a Venus Gazimi there. Venus is getting closer to the heart of the sun with that conjunction. And then he also has his Mercury happens to be conjunct Patrick Mahomes' MC. So I feel like Patrick Mahomes is going to use this guy quite a bit in a creative fashion, mostly because can you learn a playbook that quickly? We don't really know. I'm not one to speak on people's mental capabilities without really knowing them as a person. So can DeAndre Hopkins learn a playbook that quickly? Maybe. But when you're really good at football, it doesn't really matter about playbooks. It just matters of being open, finding your open routes, finding the ability to get open for your Super Bowl MVP, greatest of all time quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. And yes, this is also why I cannot be unbiased when it comes to my astrology reports. So this is once again what you get when it is me doing these shows. I love it though, because like I love the Chiefs to the point where I know their strengths, their weaknesses, their lore. I know a lot about them. So I just love doing this show because it's really teaching me a lot about my own team as well as all the moving parts. And I get to keep track of that with astrology, which is really the only way that I'm going to pay attention to something, you know, like I love the Chiefs. Do I know every single person on the roster? No. Do I follow along with all of them? No. Do I follow any of them on any social media? No. I don't do any of that. I really enjoy sports for what they are without needing to like go the personal route. They just happen to be like a lot of the Chiefs players happen to be in a lot of spheres of influence that I'm also involved in. So it's just kind of like a nice mergence of sorts. Like, yes, we will cross paths. And yes, one day I'm sure they will know that I am a Chiefs astrologer of sorts. Am I the official team astrologer? No. Have I given myself that title? Maybe. Anytime you love something as much as I love the Chiefs and you're good at looking at things like astrology and like figuring it out, it goes hand in hand. But continuing with DeAndre Hopkins' chart, knowing that his Mercury is conjunct Patrick's MC, it's going to be an easy, what I'm trying to tell you is it's like an easy shift for him. It's going to like for both Patrick and DeAndre Hopkins. Like this is something where Patrick can kind of speak his language. He speaks Patrick's language. They get each other. The chemistry is there without them ever playing together besides this week. So definitely excited about that. I also am really curious about DeAndre Hopkins' birth time because I'd love to know if he has a Virgo moon or a Leo moon. That would be really cool because like late degree Leo moon would mean that DeAndre Hopkins' moon is conjunct the Chiefs' Mars, which would give him an extra spiciness. Like I have Moon Mars conjunction in my relationship, and it gives the spiciest of synastry. So I can only imagine how much like DeAndre is going to feel boosted by this Chiefs team, and almost like he's always wanted to be here and like always wanted to like play with these guys. And it's very much a homecoming for him as well. And that's all in the seventh house of the game's chart. So this game is going to feel very much, his Jupiter is right there with the moon, if that is the case, if he does have a Virgo moon. But he does have a Virgo Jupiter, which means that he has a gift of abundance in his physical health and his physical strength. And so I feel like a lot of the times he can skate by on his physical talents. However, making sure to keep his feet going well, strongly, especially with Saturn and Pisces opposing that Jupiter and Virgo. It's very important. Women are a huge part of DeAndre Hopkins' life. Just with that 6th degree Jupiter is the merry-go-round degree of Virgo in the Sabian symbols, but the 7 degree in Virgo, so 7 degrees of Virgo is known as the harem degree, or it's represented as a harem in the Sabian symbols. So it's all about having the right women around you. So it's like an army of women almost is where he finds the most luck, which is kind of cool because like anytime that you get to have an army of women around you, it's like one, shit's gonna get done and it's gonna have style. So I'm here for it. Going into the 8th house, his Vesta in Virgo is there too, which I love a good Vesta in Virgo. I feel like it's very much like coming home and finding comfort in your own body. Going into the 9th house, which is ruled by Venus, he has his white moon in there, which once again, white moon and part of fortune, like I need to know his actual birth time to make that all make sense, but we'll get there. The one thing he has is Pluto on today's MC. It is exact today's game's MC. So 20 degrees Pluto retrograde is conjunct the 20 degree MC of today's game. With that being said, having Pluto making aspects to the MC is like basically you're transforming in public and just deal with it. You're transforming in the public eye. Your legacy is being rerouted, redefined, especially with Mercury there, conjunct that Pluto and the MC of today's game. I feel like Pluto and Mercury aspects, especially conjunctions, can be so fun in sports because you don't know what we're going to see. Like we could be seeing the DeAndre Hopkins that wanted to come out, 5 years ago, out of his shell and play the way that he's going to today. Like there's just something about him being very transformative in the public eye. Also, we were talking about the Chiefs Mars earlier. And if he had a late degree Leo moon, that moon would be conjunct Mars in the 7th house of today's game. One thing that we do know is that his actual Mars, which you're looking in the third house here, excuse me, if you're looking in the third house here, you can see the 24 degrees Aries Mars is trying exactly the Chiefs' 24-degree Leo Mars. So that's going to be definitely something to watch. I feel like he gets boosted a lot by the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Chiefs have a lot to look forward to today. Um, like I said, if you guys want to take a peek at Noah Gray's chart, here it is again. These are the two people that I'm calling out to have good games today, as well as Kareem Hunt. We did look at Kareem Hunt's chart a couple of weeks ago, though. So if you're interested, you can go and find all of those charts. All of those charts will be available in my YouTube series. I want to get to the point where I have like somebody doing the descriptions, right? And like that way you can click and see what I'm talking about, because I have a tendency to talk a lot. If you haven't noticed, I can talk for hours on end. In fact, I prefer these shows where I get to be one-on-one with you guys, because I can point out a lot of stuff about these games that I feel like will be, you know, kind of something to watch. Having like the ability to kind of see the game from a like bird's eye perspective is what I think astrology is all about. Once again, we're back on the tri-wheel chart here with the Chiefs on the outer wheel, the Raiders on the middle wheel, and the game, the Kansas City Chiefs at the Raiders, the game chart is setting the tone on the inner wheel. So, like I said, definitely getting a pointer here soon, so you guys can follow along with all that. But I really wanted to show just how dominating the Chiefs kind of look from this perspective. And, you know, with the Raiders looking very dominant as a team, and also that subconscious area of the 12th house where I feel like speed goes to die. That's where their exalted Mars and Saturn is. So, you know, a lot of the things that I think will be making a difference for the Raiders is when Pisces, or Saturn and Pisces, that retrograde happening kind of loosens up, because right now it's exactly sextile their Mars and Saturn, which falls in the 12th house of today's game. I think the Raiders are going to experience a lot more luck when Saturn gets out of Pisces, and then it'll just be Saturn squaring all of their Capricorn energy, which I feel like the square is actually going to help them build back. Whereas the sextile is like, okay, this is going to be uncomfortable for a little bit, but if you can make it through this, you can make it through anything. And honestly, with the Raiders having Tom Brady involved with ownership now, the sky is the limit. There's no real thing that they can't dream of. You know, Tom Brady is an incredibly talented and brilliant, although annoying announcer. He's a brilliant quarterback, annoying announcer, brilliant football player, terrible announcer. You get the gist. With Tom Brady being in their ownership now, maybe the Raiders will get better. Maybe they'll have a different standard for themselves. I guess we could look at the game chart just one more time. And I can show you guys a little bit more. Like the 29 is the number that I picked to really be out loud today, with the Kareem Hunt, of course, and it being on the ascendant. And then we had the 27 with the game Mars at 27, and then also the Neptune today at 27, and also Juno up here in the 9th house. Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting. There's a lot of loud pushing towards DeAndre Hopkins having a great game and Noah Gray having a great game. And I'm just going to go ahead and say that if the Raiders do have a great game today, I think it's because they start strongly and they don't give up. Like the Raiders can kind of give up sometimes. It's not necessarily they give up. They might just fizzle out, and it's just a thing of nature. So that is my analysis for today. I've been loving doing this show just because from kickoff, it's been incredible. The first show that we did was, what was that? On September 5th for the kickoff. We meaning myself, we did that show. Dr. Jess, Spicy Gemini Memes, did join for a little bit. But, you know, moving forward, I feel as though when I'm able to kind of like hone my expertise and produce the things that I wanted to produce for the show. It really is a personal venture. And as a Chiefs fan, it's great to get to be able to talk about the Chiefs from a perspective of like knowing this is all very much fated and being pushed in their favor for a three-peat. So I'm excited for it. This is also a game that I think could be just an all-out bloodbath, and really hope that the Chiefs like keep their head strong through this one. I did have quite a bit of technical ups and downs for today too, which I appreciate you guys sticking in for. You know, when there's random music, when there's random eyeliner on the top of my lid, when there's random sounds happening from my room, you know, you just kind of got to rock with it. But now that I'm kind of wrapping up for the day, I'm super grateful that I'm able to get through those things. I'm able to navigate them. I'm grateful to have you guys here with me each week. I will be back next week for the next matchup, which, you know, just because I'm world's #1 live producer and I can look up things, we're going to be facing the Buccaneers. Speaking of Tom Brady, well, he's not there anymore, but that was the last place he was there. We're going to be facing the Buccaneers at home on November 4th, that Monday Night Football. Super pumped about that. And then on November 10th, we're going to be hosting the Broncos. So that'll be interesting. That'll be the Bucs and the Broncos at home for the next couple games. Then the Chiefs are going to be going on the road to the Bills. Then we're going to be going on the road to the Panthers. Then the Raiders are going to be coming to the Chiefs. So we get the Raiders twice in 1 month. That'll be fun. Then we get the Chargers coming to the Chiefs. Then we go to Cleveland December 15th. Then the Texans come to the Chiefs December 21st. Then the Chiefs are going to be going to the Steelers. That'll be a noon game. That'll be a fun one on Christmas. So will I be doing a Christmas show? Who knows? Maybe I'll do the day before and just air it on Christmas. But if anything, I might be taking like a phone-in option for that one. And then January 5th, the Chiefs and Broncos game have yet to be decided what time, but that will be happening, Chiefs at the Broncos. So got a hell of a schedule coming up. And I know that there's plenty. We got a whole second half of the year for the Chiefs to be showing that they deserve to be in that three-peat contention still. I'm excited for it. I think that there's a lot to be said about the things that people have done to get the Chiefs here, the moves that have been made, the trades that have happened. DeAndre Hopkins was something that I think I woke up to and was like, oh, I'm glad that is the thing. I thought that was cool that we got to see that the Chiefs are still making moves no matter what, and they're going to, and they're going to continue doing so, regardless of whether people want them to or not. If they think they're overrated, too bad. I do want to share, I'm going to add a quick little thing here to share some news with you guys, just because it's my show. I get to do what I want, and sharing news with you is part of it. If you guys haven't heard already, here, let me see if I can do my hands properly. Here is my new offering. I, Gracey of Northern Astrology, have a very big, not so big secret. It's not so well kept of a secret. As an Aries, I like to do 100 things at once, and I like to start 100 little projects. And one of the things that I've been putting off starting for a very long time is my publishing house, which is going to be starting in my basement and going who knows where else. But the main thing is that I will be able to publish my Northern magazine, as well as any guidebooks or actual astrology books coming out under my own umbrella with my own team and my own kind of like space. And I want to do the same thing for other astrologers and mystical people. So with that being said, I'm really looking forward to Ninth House Publishing growing each and every day. I will be building more things and collaborations. Part of like what I want to do for my YouTube channel, as well as just like my astrology presence in general, is make sure that I'm showcasing voices that deserve and need to be heard more. There is a huge need of authenticity in every industry, in every corner of the world right now. It's not just specific to astrology, yet I find myself really drawn to sharing as many voices as possible. So with my Northern magazine, which you guys have seen, I was going to say I have like copies of it, but it's like right behind me. I'm pretty sure all my copies are right behind me. Um, so I really am going to have a place to showcase more people in the Northern magazine, as well as making some possible guidebooks for the astrology of 2025, because this year ahead is going to be wild and I want to get out ahead of that. And while we're in the depths of Scorpio season, I happen to start a publishing house that is a 29-degree Libra ninth house sun in the chart that I ended up electing in hindsight. So I didn't elect it. I just pulled the chart of the moment that I decided that I needed a publishing house. And that's what it was. So sometimes you don't need to elect everything. You can just simply act on your divine instinct and things happen for you. That's the one thing that if I could leave this week saying anything going into next week, we are going into most heightened emotional and spiritual time as an American nation. I am not one to tell you what to do with yourself, your body, your mind, your actions at all. I'm just one to let you know the general atmosphere. And the atmosphere is what some would describe as tense. We are going into an election season here in America with quite a bit of division in our country already. And the best thing that we can do as a whole is remember our strength in autonomy, our strength in our individual talents, and the strength and support that we can support others and lift them up and focus on the things that make them really freaking awesome too. So there is no competition in the world where I live. There is no competition in any sort of realm. We are all here with unique gifts that we can share. You know, some people might have a unique gift of knowing every obscure stat ever known to man about the Kansas City Chiefs, and I happen to know every obscure chart that could possibly be their birth chart. And, you know, people could think both of those things are insane, yet we get to a common goal, which is we love the Kansas City Chiefs. So whatever it is, if you hate watching this, if you love watching this, if you really enjoy this episode and you want to show some support, feel free to check out my website, which is northernastrology.com. That website is changing and evolving and adding so much more every single day. I am constantly working on it and constantly working to offer you guys more free resources for astrology. I firmly believe in everything being as affordable as possible. That's why my readings start from $22 all the way to $250, capping off at that $250 mark, just because all walks of life can benefit from astrology, and people from all financial backgrounds deserve to know a little bit of magic about themselves. So that is my plight. That is my push. If anything, I give so much away for free that you don't even need to work with me. It's just cool if you end up doing so. So once again, thank you so much for being a part of this. Chiefs are winning by at least 10 points. Key numbers to watch are 0, 8, 27, 29, and 58. And the signs to watch are Aquarius, Taurus, Cancer, Virgo, Sagittarius. I nailed it. I got it. We got them all. So thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. I will be back next week for some Monday Night Football. We're going to see Monday Night Football on one of my best friend's birthdays. So I feel like we'll be getting a win just for him. So shout out to Kovac. Happy early birthday. And I hope you guys all have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.